I work at a Five Guys drive-through restaurant. It's the first one in the UK, and staff were needed desperately. It's not terrible. I mostly work as a headset operator, taking orders and directing them to either the car park or the next window. It gets boring sometimes, but every now and then there'd be a fun guy or gal up for some light conversation, and even a "how are you" could make my day. Plus, you've got a camera, so you can see all sorts of people pulling up. Once, even a damn clown car came by, with some 20 people in it. But today, I met the sort of people that I didn't want to meet. Later on in the night, it wasn't that busy, so I slept for a good hour before I was rudely interrupted by the headset beeping off. Great, another customer. "Hi, welcome to Five Guys. How can I help?" No response. I check the camera. Instead, I see static. But I shrug it off. Maybe the cameras were broken. "Hi there. Are you looking to order or—"
"You have 5 minutes.
The voice was crackly and distorted. Heavy breathing came through the other end. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?"
5 minutes. That's all you got. Tell your friends."
And with that, the screeching of car tires took off. I checked down my end, and the guys at the other window just looked at me, puzzled. I took it as some prank call, some edgy teenagers or something. I closed my eyes again. What awoke me this time wasn't my headset's beeping, rather the crash and banging from inside the store. Screams and hasty yelling. Was it a rat? A pigeon? No, it was much worse. The moment I turned the corner, I watched in horror as a colleague of mine struggled in the grasp of a burly man wearing a trench coat and balaclava. He pressed his face down towards the fry station, bubbling at full heat. Around him, the rest of the staff cowered on their knees. He wasn't able to hold out for long, and just like that, his entire head plunged into the oil. Though his mouth was surely filled with scalding oil, his screaming was clear to hear. After a while, his legs stopped kicking, and he went limp. The intruder then noticed me and began walking over. I scrambled to the office, tightly locking the door, and looked around for a weapon. Unsurprisingly, there was nothing. The door then shuddered once, and again. The man was trying to barge into the office. I pushed myself into the door hopelessly, and after the 5th push, I was knocked into the side cabinet, out cold. As I regained consciousness, there was a burning sensation on my back. It was warm at first, and then it got hotter, until I could barely withstand the pain. White stars filled my vision, and I could barely make out what it was causing me such pain. And then it clocked. I was laying flat on the grill, and the smell of my charred flesh filled my nose. I tried getting up, but 2 burly hands pushed me back down firmly. It was the same guy with the balaclava. He stared at me, unflinching. Underneath, the grill was becoming hotter and hotter. It felt like my skin was being burnt to ashes. I flailed, but nothing would budge. I desperately grasped around the worktop beside me, when finally I picked up something familiar. Using a meat fork, I drove its prongs into the man's thighs. He released me, and I rolled onto the cold floor, sighing in his relief. But I didn't wait for long. Despite the pain, I hobbled into the fry station. I picked up a fry basket, and without a second thought, I hammered it across the man's face. In an instant, he plummeted to the floor, screaming in agony. But I didn't stop there. I continued smashing him with the same basket, relishing in the sinful act. I kept on hitting him until he was a bloody pulp, and with my stamina drained, I fell back. The floor was so cooling. I awoke in an ambulance, an IV drip attached to my arm, the blinding light above me. I stood up shakily and overheard some officers outside.
"Yeah, he was the only survivor. You don't want to go inside there, Chief."
"Why is that?"
"They've been cooked, all of them. Some of them eaten too, it seems."
I stumbled back a little, and a mirror caught the corner of my eye. It was the cooked, seared meat that my back had turned into. as brown and moist as any burger we served, but nothing seemed more appetizing than what I saw in the reflection. I've been working at Five Guys for a while now. I know all the staff, and for the most part, they're all fantastic people, apart from one guy. His name's Chris, and I honestly don't know what his problem is. Whenever I ask him for help on a certain task, he just scoffs and walks away. And whenever he needs help himself, he'll order everyone around like he owns the place. I mean, he's not even a manager. It's not like he has any business telling us what to do. Just about everyone hates him. Nobody more than his own girlfriend, who also works here. She's Juliana, the complete opposite. She's sweet, funny, and likable. Every single shift I was in, you could hear Chris's annoying voice, even over the general ruckus of the restaurant, screaming about dumb things like sending down the food late or leaving a door open.
Where are the fries, man? Can you hurry up with the orders? Hey you, give me the chicken strips right now.
Honestly, I don't know what Juliana saw in him. One night, it was especially bad. It was near closing time, when quite suddenly we could hear Chris and his girlfriend arguing in the back room, away from sight, but definitely within hearing. This time, it was about who was responsible for clearing out the trash, and to nobody's surprise, it was Chris's turn. Just when arguing turned to screaming, the loud crack of a door opening sounded. Our manager, this tall-built dude called Dave, rushed in to check on the situation. Now don't get me wrong, Dave's a great guy. He's got that quiet but dependable nature about him. But get him angry, like a few unfortunate customers have in the past, and all hell breaks loose.
Hey Chris, stop complaining and get the hell back to work!
Dave's yelling easily overpowered Chris's, and it was over in a few seconds, with Chris leaving in a huff, red-faced and fists clenched. Dave came out a few seconds later, and in a low tone, told us we could leave for the night, assuring us that he could run the store until closing time. A few of us stayed on regardless, impressed with his diligence and display of power. We watched as he took Juliana upstairs, her head facing down. That was the last time we saw her that night. She returned to work the following morning with Dave, a lot cheerier. Chris also came in, but Dave made sure to put him on bin duty, away from sight and far from Juliana. What he did next was surprising. As Chris turned his back, Dave gave her a quick peck on the cheek, which she didn't resist. Instead, she blushed. She then returned the favor. For 2 months, Dave would repeat this, coming to the store with Juliana, sending Chris to the bins, kissing his girlfriend, touching her shoulders, and continuing with his work. We found it hilarious. Chris was an asshole, and if this didn't stomp out the flames of his ego, we didn't know what would. If only we knew just how much fury he held inside. One particular night, Dave, thinking the coast was clear, started to flirt with Juliana once again, touching her shoulders and whispering sweet nothings. However, after all this time, Chris finally came storming into the kitchen, completely dismissing his duties. And just like that, Juliana was caught cheating.
I knew it! Dave, you son of a...
Chris said as he tightly grabbed a hold of Dave's collar.
Stay away from him, Juliana. I'm warning you.
And for at least 5 minutes, Chris stood there talking crap, while Dave remained calm and stoic. Juliana, on the other hand, was horrified.
Chris, please don't. There's been a misunderstanding.
Listen, Chris, we can settle this the old-fashioned way. But if you don't want to lose your job, then you better get back to bin duty.
Chris was still seething with anger, but he restrained himself with every ounce of willpower. But just as he was turning back towards the exit, Dave made an audacious remark.
Maybe she just wants a real man.
He said it in a quiet undertone, yet Chris heard every word of it.
What the f*** did you just say?
And instead of backing down, Dave came forward and said it loud and clear.
Maybe she wants a real man, you know. Instead of a fat, ugly coward who cries about everything. Look, guys, Chris is about to wet his pants.
Why, you little...
And without warning, Chris threw a punch at Dave. But Dave, as calm as the sea, dodged the punch and gripped Chris's arm with ease. This was the act of aggression that he had been waiting for. A brawl ensued, one which saw the much larger Dave keep his opponent on the back foot. At that point, I don't think Dave cared about his job anymore. Instead of backing off on the defense, he started to attack Chris. The way he punched Chris, again and again, would make you cringe in pain. Every single employee just stood there watching, too shaken to move. The next moment happened in a flash, quite literally, a flash of steel. From his pocket, Chris pulled out a knife, which he drilled into Dave's stomach. He cried in agony and collapsed to the floor. As he tried to cover up the deep wound, Chris's face was a bloody mess, bruised and battered, but the vengeance he had in his eyes pushed him to do the unthinkable. He pulled the knife out of Dave's stab wound and raised it over his head.
Now you'll know my pain! Die!
And just as Dave was about to meet his fate, Juliana's quick thinking saved his life. Taking a heavy fire extinguisher, she smashed it into the back of Chris's head. And just like that, he crumpled to the floor. She then proceeded to hit him 3 more times, just for good riddance, before she collapsed to the floor in tears. Dave somehow recovered, but he was in critical condition and had to spend the next 2 months in hospital. In some kind of miracle, him and Juliana won the court case, as he had only retaliated in self-defense. He also went on to make it official with Juliana, and soon they were off on their honeymoon. Chris also survived, but he was completely brain dead, so much so that he could only ever mutter one word. I'd see him every now and then, taking a walk with an attendant outside the hospital. His head was misshapen, and all he barked out was,
Die! Die! Die!